Tanya Woods, and Lee Nugyen. Let's give them all a round of applause, and I'll let them take it from here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ben. Sorry, mic problems. All right, so thank you all for attending this first panel session today. And as you know, our topic is all around ecosystem building. And we have an incredible group of panelists here today that have a lot of experience in not only ecosystem building, but fostering innovation and collaboration. Our first speaker that we have on the panel is Steve Maybee. He's the Vice President of Operations and Infrastructure at the Edmonton International Airport. He has held several positions in his 26 years with the Airport Authority, including supply chain management, human resources and safety, and IT. His current responsibilities include emergency planning, maintenance, security, safety, regulatory affairs and operational compliance, master planning, and project delivery. Steve is passionate about technology and how to leverage it to improve services, create more efficient processes, and transform better passenger journey while maintaining a safe and secure environment. I can definitely speak firsthand to how supportive he is of technology innovation, and he'll tell you all about that. Our next speaker that I'm very excited to introduce is Malcolm Bruce. Malcolm is the Chief Executive Officer of the newly formed Edmonton Global, a regional economic development corporation that drives growth and investment in the Edmonton region. Edmonton Global is a joint venture owned equally by 15 municipalities in the Edmonton region. Before its creation, economic development in the Edmonton region was done at a municipal rather than a regional level. Edmonton Global was created to change this. With his work, Malcolm brings together regional strengths and networks to seize on the potential of emerging markets. So thank you for being here, Malcolm. Our next speaker is Tanya Woods. Tanya is the founding managing director of the Chamber of Digital Commerce Canada, the first national advocacy group representing the interest of Canada's blockchain technology ecosystem to government. Tanya has been an active contributor to the global digital innovation ecosystem for nearly 2 decades, working on cutting-edge technology and legal issues facing industry, legislators, and policymakers. And last but certainly not least, we have Lee Nugyen. Lee has over 20 years of experience in the financial services industry, specializing in capital markets in her current role. Lee leads Accenture's blockchain capability for Canada, where she is responsible for driving growth through strategic engagements with clients across industries. Passionate about innovation and the beliefs that technology will change the way we live and work, Lee focuses on educating and spreading the awareness about blockchain and how companies can leverage this technology to unlock value and better position themselves in the new economy to enhance competitiveness, spearhead growth, and increase revenue. So thank you all for being here today. I'm very excited to kick off this panel discussion with you. And I will also let you know that we do have time for Q&A. So if you hear anything, you just want to know a little bit more, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this when we're ready. So our first question, and this question's to the panel. Over your career, what have you personally experienced regarding the challenges and opportunities of building a successful ecosystem? Steve, we'll start with you.
Well, it's really about the partnerships that we're creating. In any of these types of systems that we're doing with, we can't do it alone. In my industry, it's highly regulated. We need all the partners at the table. Government is an important part of that. They have to be out in front and along with us, but they also have to let industry and the tech sector help lead that and provide the proof of concepts and give us some leeway to do it and not get burdened by the numerous regulations that we work within. We're finding that now. We're getting a little bit more leeway in that, but it's important that all those partners are at the table. We're all talking together because it's the only way something like blockchain in aviation for sure is going to expand and grow.
I look at it in 3 different component parts. One is leadership, one is vision, and the third part is trust. At the end of the day, you need catalytic leadership to be able to drive an outcome that is a collective endeavor. The vision helps you keep your focus, because without vision, it's really challenging to stay focused. And if you put it in really simplistic terms, the vision enables you to decide what you're going to buy. The question now is figuring out how much you're going to pay for it and how you're going to pay for it. And on the trust component, this is probably the biggest challenge for all of us that build these kind of ecosystems, because ultimately we're asking people to give a little of something to be able to get something bigger and better out the outcome. And so trust is probably your biggest challenge on any of these things, but without it, you will not be successful.
I have a little bit to add, but not really that much, because I do think the trust component is critical. I was a former trade negotiator, and trying to get the provinces aligned with the feds was in and of itself nearly impossible. And then get Canada a vision forward internationally was even that much more challenging. And this is why trade negotiations take years and years and years and sometimes don't work out. In our ecosystem, there's tremendous potential. And some of the biggest challenges are still at the granular level in the community itself. So I think for us to grow forward, as with other communities I've worked on building, is within the community we have to speak often, speak plainly, try and understand each other's positions, and then figure exactly out how we're going to build our trust, how we're going to communicate to the world together. Because at this stage we are so small. We're at risk if we can't get ourselves aligned rather quickly. We're at risk of the government deciding everything for us. And we're one of the more interesting tech sectors that I've ever worked in, where the government has actually become such an impediment at such an early stage of innovation, to the point that it's chilling and killing innovation, that we need to quickly come together and do that. And I think there's a lot of incredible cohesion in Alberta, which is amazing to see, and I'm excited to see what we can do going forward. So I'm going slightly off topic, but I think tying the two together, the communication and trust building, is critical, and then figuring out how not to make it personal, because oftentimes we're so invested in our work that personal component, whether you're in trade negotiations, in telecoms, or whatever, some of my favorite CEOs and leaders have just figured out how it's just not personal. And I say this quite openly, that it's hard when you put your whole life into something, or your money or your livelihood is contingent on it. That can be quite hard. So I think if we can get quickly to that trusted position and learn how to communicate often and openly with each other, I think we have the best prospects.
I guess if I can add to that is, an ecosystem or blockchain ecosystem is a team sport. We are wired to always act on our own interests and our own companies, but in an ecosystem, we need to put that down and work together to the common goal. So it's really important to have a very strong governing body, a governance model with clear goal and responsibility, with a mission and vision that we're going to achieve this together for the whole ecosystem, not just for one company. Everybody's going to gain interest and benefits throughout the whole process. I think that's very key to move forward.
No, thank you. Actually, this leads perfectly into my next question here. Bringing together parties with diverse needs and interests is always challenging, but it's essential for collaborative technology like blockchain. How can our community best unite government, industry, and nonprofits and give them a platform to work together? Let's start with you.
I think it's very, very important to bring awareness and education to everyone, and this kind of forum is amazing for us to get educated on what's going on in the technologies, and what's happening in the ecosystem, what use case are we having, what the application of blockchain actually impacts business and operations. So bringing everybody together, getting the educations. The problem with adoption is because you don't understand the technology and the blockchain, right? So you need to get educated. Make it a priority, share our lesson learned, educate other on the application of blockchain is very key to move things forward.
I think celebrating success together. We can all complain together, but it's actually more productive to celebrate the success together, to brag a lot more than we are. James, earlier in the week, had some significant wins with Guild 1, and I'm excited to share that. Hubert with Trust Bix has had incredible success, and I've been sharing it. And knowing that you have visible and invisible champions across the country and building up that cheerleading squad, we all know it's hard. We all know it can really suck at times, but really seeing an ecosystem grow is when we start to celebrate each other's successes, to add to what Lee also said.
It's a really interesting question because I look at it from two component parts. So I emphasize a lot, and I like to reinforce some of the points, particularly Tanya's made in terms of the external view. I mean, each and every one of you is an ambassador for your own technology, your own community, and your own system. And you need to promote that success and promote the activities that are going on within your own ecosystem. I can tell you from coming from the Edmonton metropolitan region, we did this little thing called a reverse site selector. We went out to 22 different international site selectors and said, what do you know about the Edmonton metropolitan region? 82% of them came back and said, we don't know anything about you at all. And the other 18% that came back said, there's 3 words that prominently describe the Edmonton metropolitan region: remote, cold, disconnected. That's the international view of what the Edmonton metropolitan region has ongoing. Yet at the University of Alberta, we have number 3 or number 4 ranked AI capacity globally. What's going on in AI at the U of A is unbelievable. And you look at the largest petrochemical clusters up there, you look at the largest manufacturing parks in Canada of its kind are up there, yet nobody understands what is there. So part of our own responsibilities is to start to promote that through our own network so folks understand what opportunities are there. But internally to the region, I would say one of the biggest challenges we have is just knowing what we have in the region. The ecosystem itself, particularly in the tech sector at the Edmonton metropolitan region, is not even mapped out. So I can't tell you from ideation to globalization all the people that have a play in that space. So whether it's an angel investor network, or whether it's a mentorship network, or whether it's people that I can tell you where the top 10 high potential companies are within the ecosystem. I don't have that yet, but we're going to do that. Because that's what also then creates an enabling function for the ecosystem to grow and build and facilitate and become self-sustaining. And that is such a critical part. And the last part I'll say, because I've been talking too long, is the other thing that the ecosystem needs is not just all the tech, but one of the shortfalls that we have is the management skills. So I'll give you an example. We had one company in the Edmonton metropolitan region. It's got the potential to become a unicorn. It's at that scale-up stage now, so they knew they needed to go get some C-suite help to actually manage the company to scale. They could only find that C-suite talent down in the US because about 95% of this particular capacity was down there, so they went and found a person. The person would not come any farther north than Toronto, with a stipulation in the contract that they would come out to Edmonton once a month for a week. And they hired the individual because they needed the individual. And it wasn't because they didn't want to go to Vancouver or Calgary or Edmonton per se. What they were worried about was, if they are unsuccessful with that company, where else in the ecosystem can I go? And when they looked around, they thought Toronto was the best fit if for some reason it didn't work out. So part of the reason why this ecosystem coherence and build is so important is because it's all those other enabling things that we need to have a successful ecosystem.
I love that, thank you.
That was my answer too.
Well, actually, Steve, I'd love you to talk about what the Edmonton International Airport is doing. Very few people are aware of the level of innovation that actually is happening there.
Yeah, we've taken a different look at technology and what's happening out there in the world. We have a choice. We can either sit back and get disrupted because all the technologies are coming regardless whether we want it or not. But we're choosing to get in front and leverage and help us disrupt industry and do things differently. So we've partnered with a number of companies. We've created, we work with Edmonton Global, and what we've created is a bit of an incubation site. So we've brought people together, similar to what ABC is doing with this, and it's fantastic. You start bringing the people together, they start feeding off each other, they start talking, and that's what we need. We need awareness to the great tech sector that we have in Alberta, the smart people we have around in this room and within Edmonton and Calgary and through the province, and we need to promote it. We need to explain it because nobody knows. A year and a half ago, I was at a meeting down in Washington, and they threw out the word blockchain within passenger travels and government regulation, and I bet you 99% of the people in the room had no clue what it even was when they first started. Now they're talking about it all the time. We need awareness. We need people at the table, and we need industry, folks like myself and the company I work with, to be leaders and to partner with folks and get out there and do what we're doing and give these small startups and these companies a place to start. And that's what we're trying to do in Edmonton. We're giving people a place to start. They test their wares and their technologies and find ways to apply it. That's what we need to do. We need to show what are the use cases? Where can we use that technology? And it might not be a perfect fit, but how can it be adapted for what we're trying to do?
Can I just add to that? Because in our work working with corporations, so Accenture is a management consulting company, and we work with a lot of large corporations, Fortune 500 companies, and I think a lot of the time when a innovation or blockchain project's moving forward and successfully is to have leaderships like Steve, like who embrace technologies. We need senior leaderships in the company to really sponsor the project, sponsor the initiative, to really believe in it and embrace it and really give it a ground for the team to test the technology, get your hand dirty and tried it. And, we are all working in an agile way nowadays, fail fast and learn fast. And that's how innovation will be accelerated.
I definitely agree with that. I've definitely noticed in my career in terms of trying to commercialize technology, the one thing that, of course, we're amazing at innovation, but the technical side is the part that people keep trying to get people educated on. It's like, oh, if you just understand my technology, and they get so deep into that. But if you want people to understand what you have, being able to speak to them about what it's going to do for their business, how it's going to support them, how can it generate revenue, how can it increase safety, how can it decrease operational costs. Those are the business conversations that need to happen for people to be like, all right, let's adopt the technology. I know, Steve, their airport was the very first in the world to allow drones on airside. Just that level of innovation that they have there. They're pioneering, and it's incredible.
Sorry, I've got to highlight what the Edmonton International Airport is doing in terms of that incubation. I don't think Steve is he's being way
modest.
too humble. Yeah.
Okay, this is a problem, actually. Canadians are too nice.
Right now, if I could take what the airport does and sort of package that up and put that across the province, this province would be first in the world. So far, they've got 23 or 24 startup technologies that they are piloting on their airport site through, as they said, remote drones to help bird control that is now starting to spread across other airports, to autonomous vehicles on the security side to do all the perimeter fence that is incredible. And these kind of things are enabling proof of technologies that then can be sold and marketed elsewhere because they've got the international airport to carry back it. So I got to admit, I've taken their great idea, and now whenever I meet with a big company like a Capital Power or an EBCOR or Stantec, or all these big companies, I say, I appreciate you have shareholders, but what are you doing for the ecosystem that's going to take new technology and help solve one of the problems you have? And in one case, there was a technology I saw being tested on the airport side, and it was about how to use AI and sensors to read any deviations in bearings. And this company I was speaking with has a number of wind farms, which is very bearing driven. And sure enough, they engineered the technology for 3 months, and they're now deploying it across their wind farms so they can go from a reactive maintenance program to a preventive maintenance program based on these sensors. We collectively, as an organization and as a community, needs to start reinforcing these things, and for our smaller companies, so we can start getting this technology tested and into market.
That leads beautifully. Actually, I'm loving how this is leading into all of my questions. You guys are doing phenomenal. Thank you. So industry support is incredibly important in terms of funding. I would know this personally. Networking and building our influence and capacity to make a difference. What are some of the ways that the blockchain ecosystem can help industry be more aware of our work and engage in our community? So we have the advocacy that's coming out from groups like yourselves, these larger organizations going out to the big business. But how can our ecosystem, or the members of our ecosystem as a whole, how can we come and engage with industry and help them become more aware the value that we can bring. Tanya, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So last week I was in Toronto, and there's a lot of activity, as you all know, in Toronto. There always is. And every time I fly west, I hear how annoyed everyone is. But I was in Toronto, so I apologize. And I was speaking with a number of the CEOs. They were all there together at a high-level political industry event, basically. And I was challenging all of them, including, I was sharing earlier, the Toronto Port Authority. I said, what have you done lately? You know, Edmonton, blah, 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 blah. And I think it's just putting in front of them at every chance you get, wherever they are. Certainly my role as a national advocate for the ecosystem and wanting it to grow, I take that on. I think that's my responsibility to make sure I'm constantly saying to CEOs and to heads of innovation, hey, you know, like, it would cost you a lot to innovate this internally. Why don't you take the Silicon Valley model and, like, have a little bit of an arm's length distance and just pilot it? What's it gonna do for you? A, best case scenario, you end up buying something that you really think is cool and you get a competitive edge. Or B, you've learned something that may now not fit with your business and you can refocus and say you've done the test and you've thought about it. What's it do for that entrepreneur? I can tell you, having built a tech company myself, a very difficult thing to do, so applause to everyone doing it. The first time you go to an investor, they say, what's your traction? What's your market fit? Prove it. Last night, I was standing with two investors, and they said, you know, what would you tell a company to do? And I would say, I'd tell a company to go bang on the door of the biggest, baddest person in the industry that they want to serve and say, hey, I want to do something for free with you, and I'm going to give you crap tons of great PR about it, because everybody loves a bigger giant that helps out someone small, and we're going to do something together that's great, and then we're going to prove market fit, and then we both become quite possibly very interesting to investors. That kind of leadership happens in Silicon Valley all the time. I have lots of friends, they go cut their first deals. Koleya has a stat, do you want to share it? About business being within the first few, you've been saying it all week, it's great.
This is one of my favorite lines. So if any of you try to commercialize technology in this province, you've probably experienced difficulty getting it to market, which is why a lot of people actually travel down to Silicon Valley. Most of the time, their first 5 clients are actually within 1 mile of their shop. It's incredible. The Americans' willingness to adopt something new, try it. They'll just try anything. In Alberta, you're actually lucky if your first client is in your province, and even luckier if your first client is in Canada. That's a massive issue. And the reason why it's such a dramatic issue is the companies that start here, like how many of you know that one of Uber's co-founders is Karringten? That's Alberta ingenuity. Does he live here? No. He's gone somewhere else because they were willing to adopt this technology. They were willing to try something new. If we don't start adopting these models of getting more engagement from companies like the Edmonton International Airport, more advocacy from the Digital Chamber, more advocacy from groups like Accenture and Edmonton Global, and then industry saying, yes, I am willing to try this, we're going to lose students, we're going to lose incredible companies, we're going to lose GDP, and we're not going to be able to move forward together as a province.
Yeah, I highly agree, and it's a countrywide problem. It's not even just province. So my first client took me 4 years to get, and they were in LA. Why? I don't want to leave my country to do business. I do not want to. I want to see my country adopt my product with my values. We share commonalities. And what ends up happening, if we can't do this really big, attractive marketing campaign across tech sectors, frankly, we won't look attractive because we're not presenting ourselves that way. So I applaud groups like the Edmonton Airport. I will applaud you publicly. I will applaud you loudly across the country in order to inspire that competitive feeling that other people have in the space. And I think if we can all do that together when we work with our industry partners, we help them look good, they will continue to help us. So it's a long answer, but it's an issue that I've experienced from a variety of facets. Americans will jump on anything quickly. I mean, they're competitive. They're ready to show up for this. In Canada, we think way too hard about things. We just have to try, and we just have to know we feel fast, we go quickly, and then we all learn together.
I would add nothing venture, nothing gain. I mean, take a seat at the table. And the only way you can learn is, get a seat at the table, really enjoy the ecosystem and have the discussion and learn. And I guess we should start with anything, that's truly a business problem. Some low-hanging fruit. I'm sure there's a lot of that, with blockchain you can help with transparency and visibility, will enhance the speed of information, take away the inefficiency in operation for any companies. share that success, as Tanya said earlier. Get people just to know about the implication of blockchain and technology and innovations. It will help accelerate. I think the collaboration and the join the game is really key.
Can I just add two things? So just from a company perspective, remember, and I'm talking about a company that you're going to help solve one of their business problems. It's a question of risk for them. And if you look at the nature of the companies that we have, big ones here, they're really in the risk-adverse business. And so you need to make sure that when you're packaging or trying to market your product, you recognize that they are coming from a different position than you are. You are, by nature of who you are, a risk taker and somebody that's looking to drive change and be transformational. They're in the business of reducing risk to as small a possible margin as feasible. Construction, engineering, energy, these are all risk-adverse type professions because the consequences of failure is so high. So we just need to figure out how we're going to work together to be able to do that. And I would also say on the other one is on the funding. If you look at our traditional financial institutions, very few of them like intangible assets to fund, right? The idea is hard to fund. A bricks and mortar piece is easier to fund. So understand just from where they come from and trying to figure out how you can bridge that gap to get to where you need to be in a collaborative way.
Actually, Malcolm, I love what you said there. And Steve, you have some pretty incredible firsthand experience in terms of dealing with forward, fast-moving companies and having to apply risk and procedure and regulation to them. And I know it's kind of helped shifted your view a little bit because coming from that strongly risk-adverse side, like making sure that you're managing everything and trying to de-risk the situations, but then going, but we need to innovate. We need to move forward because if we do not innovate, we're going to lose that competitive edge and then we're going to lose more market share. So what has the experience of having the Alberta Aerospace Technology Centre and the unique technologies that no one else was willing to try, what has that done to your kind of view on these new innovative technologies?
Well, I've aged a lot in the last 2 years because of it, that's for sure. But for industry, it's scary, right? So when I look at this, and when I first got involved a few years ago, and our business development side of the airport, they're out looking for every shiny thing that's out there, and then they hand it off to me because I have to operationalize it and make it work in a highly regulated industry. So for me, when they first came forward, and there was a couple that came forward, one was on drones. So I was chair of a national committee of airports working with government on the regulations around drones. So I'd go to Ottawa and help write the regulations that said, stay away from airports, we don't want that stuff anywhere near us. I'd come back to the office and I'd be working with drone operators about incorporating them into our airfield and into our practices. Because drones aren't going away, it's a future. We have to find ways for commercial traffic and drones to interact and work together. So now we're 2 years later on that, and we do over 1,000 live drone operations while working at an operational airport. We don't shut down. Last week, we did the first night flight of a drone to calibrate one of our landing systems, something that would have taken tens of thousands of dollars, aircraft flight check, and people. We did it with a drone in an hour on the airfield. So we have to be willing to take the risks. We have to open our minds a little bit, and it's scary. We did the same thing with ACI, and take a technology that was built for a different industry. There's a great use case for it within aviation, and then find a way. And that's one thing I've learned through this past couple of years is to open my mind around the technologies and find solutions to trial it in a safe and secure manner. It still has to be safe. It has to meet the regulations. But there's ways to do it and ways to work with the tech sector and those folks coming forward. So it's been eye-opening. It's been exciting and challenging. But we got to find ways, and industry has to open up and find ways to do that. That's what we're doing in Edmonton.
No, thank you. Anyone to add for that?
I think I just want to add that, the technology innovation bring a lot of ROI for the corporation, but also there's a social innovation aspect of that. With blockchain, we're very proud to share an example. We are partnering with blockchain for Indigenous Rights International with Gear One and Accenture. We're actually looking into a solution how to show transparency in terms of land rights and royalty payments. And that is an example showing that we are trying to help innovate social innovations, helping the indigenous group to getting the accurate payment of whatever they own, but also an opportunity to bring technology and emerging technologies to a bit less privileged community, and helping that's something that we should also, as an example, we should celebrate and bring it to awareness of everyone as well as the government. That technology is just not, the ROI for the company, but the ROI for the society as well.
I wanna just add to this. So one of the best pieces of business advice I ever got was when I had just come back from London and I was doing one of my law degrees in Ottawa, and a lawyer came in, and she's well known across the country as a very good tech lawyer. And at the time, her firm was really small. It wasn't that big at all. And she said, I go to bed every night with my clients and I wake up every morning with my clients. And I remember sitting there thinking, my God, this is not what we're supposed to be doing in law. And then she qualified it by reading about their business. And she spends religious hours reading about their business so that she can already understand their ecosystem, their challenges, and she shows up not with the solution she thinks that they need, but in a totally other way, and it makes her engage with them so much better. It makes their time together so much more efficient. So if you look at the ecosystem right now, the most under-discussed aspects of blockchain technology relate to social innovation, which is what prompted me wanting to share this. In 2030, the whole world is working, in theory, toward the SDGs, the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Guess what big corporations are thinking about right now? The UN Sustainable Development Goals and what they're going to actually do about it. Blockchain is such an incredible offering as a technology to this space, because you've got 17 goals all interrelated around challenges that countries are facing. If you can come up with a technological solution with a large corporate partner that can address a global issue, that's pure gold. From a marketing perspective, from an impact perspective on the ecosystem, and from a partnership perspective. And they're very, very open right now to looking at different things in this space. And guess what? It's not going to interfere with their current state of business. In theory, it shouldn't. It's something that's easy to do adjacent to standard operating practices. And most companies know that they need to be doing something about it. And it can't just be marketing. So if any of you are wondering what to do about partnerships with these big organizations, I just want to share, I think this is just a tremendous opportunity. And there's been zero, in my opinion, clear standout global leaders driving this. So it means that there's a whole green field that we can all start to play in.
Thank you so much. I have definitely loved hearing all of your perspectives on this panel. I think it's invaluable to our audience to learn about what it takes to build an ecosystem. One of the things that we'd love to do is really get our audience engagement. So we have this really fun box. It's a speaker box. It's going to get tossed around. You can literally throw it around the room. It will not hurt if it hits you. It's been tested. So if anyone has any questions, if you raise up your hand, that box is going to get thrown to you, and you can ask it to any one of our panelists. Awesome. We got one right over there. Oh, come on. You got to throw it. There we go. That's the fun part. So you just speak okay, so the black part right there, just speak right on into it.
Okay, so I guess this is more towards Steve. When you were talking about risk and trial, how do you prepare your teams for the possible failures, the negative outcomes? And if you do that, do you find it helps to help them okay, we failed, let's move on, next step?
Yeah, so we've a couple things. So we have adopted, it's hard for staff to know that we could try something and have it fail. So we have talked to people, it's okay to fail. Not everything that we try, not every technology we partner with is going to be a success. And we've allowed ourselves to fail fast and learn and know that. And we have, like we said, we've got 20 some odd startups on site right now doing different things. we're not directly partnering with every one of those, but we're engaged with them and finding ways for them to do things. But it is hard for staff because, and I'm sure most of your teams are the same way, we like to win. We don't want to lose. So to get somebody to the point to say, we're going to invest a couple $100,000 or $500,000 in this, and then it doesn't work, we have to acknowledge that and say, that's fine, we're going to move on to the next one. But it's not easy, and it's been a real employee change management piece that we're working on as well.
Thank you. Anyone else? Raise your hand. Box gets tossed to you. Even bounces.
Just, I have a question about, we talked about a lot of high-level aspects, but the devil's in the details, and that interface between the value proposition and risk and what's in it for me and building this ecosystem. If people are marketing this and to have this concept kind of catch fire in our communities, can you guys name 3 specific kind of examples where, what the return has been given, some of the challenges and what the upside and downside has been, and kind of from more of a financial basis? Because at the end of the day, people still have to be paid, right? So I'm just trying to wrap my head around that one. Thanks.
Okay, so my understanding of the question is you're looking for examples of blockchain technology that's been commercially adopted that's generated revenue. Is that that's what we're asking?
Well, I can talk from an airport's perspective. We're involved in a number of different things, but one of the areas that blockchain is really coming forward is on data, personal identification of people, making everyone in here, you've been through an airport in the last few years, it's a pain in the ass to travel through an airport at times. And we know that, the security, but when you think about it, when you book a flight, you book a ticket on someone, that data is shared with just who you booked with. It's not shared with US Customs or Canada Customs or any of the other agencies. Everybody has their own source of truth of the information, so it makes the whole process that more challenging. And the data is not shared across the board with anybody, and data is gold. Even from an airport perspective, we want that data. We want to know how many times that Steve traveled in the last year from the airport and what his spending habits were, because then we can tailor-made the travel experience for Steve differently than it may be for Malcolm. And we can do that. And quite honestly, we can monetize that too, because then we can upsell different things. We can do that. Like, it's all, but there's also a way to make it more efficient. So that travel experience through an airport takes labor, people, and systems. And every organization has labor and people and systems in that. That's all costing money. We can make it much more efficient, which it can also make the ticket price lower, because we're going to charge the airline lower to work at our airports. So if we can make that whole process more efficient, more streamlined, and safer, and reduce cost, it's a win-win for everybody.
Sorry, I'm just going to give you an example of what goes wrong when we don't have a blockchain system in place. So many of you will realize in the news a few months ago, there was an issue about certification of our meat products going into China, particularly around pork. So China suspended all those certifications because we recognized there's somehow false certifications got into the value chain that indicated that we couldn't give 100% guarantee that the pork that we'd shipped to China actually met all the Canadian standards as well as the Chinese standards. So they stopped the shipment. The impact was $100 million on the pork industry. So if we have something like blockchain, then you have that transparency, you have that full visibility from beginning to end, that will alleviate all those kind of issues that we currently have on an international stage.
To speak to a company that's actually doing work in that sector, though, you have Trustbix. They do supply chain management from everything from birth through to burger on blockchain right now. taking that technology and being able to prove complete transparency as well as lineage of these particular animals, from pork to beef, like large cattle products, allows us to export, but also impacts human health and safety. So I'll give you an example. Walmart in China was able to reduce their food recall times down from 6 days to 2 seconds. That is millions and millions and millions of dollars in savings. If they have a contamination outbreak, they know exactly where it came from, where the food was processed, where it was transported to, and can instantaneously take it off the shelves. Companies can lose up to $100 million or more at a mass food recall because they have no idea where the contamination came from, and it could take them up to 6 days to try and figure it out. So it's already being impactful. I wish I could give you solid numbers, but none of us actually have a specific business that's currently doing that, but we do know of companies that are in revenue that are making this impact, that there's a reason why companies are adopting it.
I mean, I'm only going to add this to your question. I think shifting the thinking a minute is going to be helpful, because what they've all said, basically, I'm going to paraphrase, is this is a massive efficiency infrastructure play. So when someone puts down pavement on a road, they don't necessarily start with the question of, am I going to make money on that road, unless they're running a toll business? But it's necessary infrastructure. When the internet was built, they didn't say, how am I going to make money on the internet? I mean, it wasn't even built with that in mind at first. This is an infrastructure, a massive global piece of infrastructure, this technology, and everything that's going to be built on top of it, that is being built on top of it, all of the uses we can identify today that are in what we'll call production or development, in addition to the exponential ways that it's going to advance when it starts to really engage with AI and with other IoT applications, and then with national infrastructure, it's all ahead of us. But we're laying down the framework of the infrastructure. So if you want to help to pave the road, that's a great thing to do. If you want to engage with these companies that are all thinking through standard processes that exist today and making them digital, that's important. When you can turn a cost center into a smaller cost center, or even if you can turn it into a revenue generating center for a business, you've won. But it's not always apparent at the outset.
Thank you. So we have time for one more question before our next panel comes up. Does anyone else have another question? Oh, sorry, we have one right there.
Sorry, I'm just still holding this thing. Just to summarize then, I'm hearing that it's really all about efficiency and risk at this point in time. That's kind of what I'm hearing, cost reduction, although there are certain opportunities for revenue generation. That's kind of what I've heard. Thanks.
Blockchain technology is still new. A lot of people are going to make assumptions that just because they hear it and it's a buzzword, it's commercially adopted, and I think there was a question down here, and it's this magical fix. It's 10 years in. To create mass adoption for a technology, it usually takes about 25 years. It's in the innovation stage, which is why events like this are meant to educate people on the potential, the use cases, the applications for this technology. It will get to a point where people will become more aware and be able to get more solid numbers, but it's still in an R&D process, early stage implementation. It's very important to be aware of that.
But can I just ask before you go on, there's so many application and use cases out there, and there's a country that's using blockchain in production. So the Australian Stock Exchange is now building the entire clearing and settlement system on DLT, distributed ledger technologies, another word for blockchain. So, advancement is happening. It's going at very fast pace. And if you don't pay attention to it, when you start hearing people, generate new revenues in blockchain and all the ROIs, it might be too late. So it's really, get yourself in the game and learn about the technology and field it for yourself.
Another question down here. I just was going to make a comment on at Monday's Blockchain and Energy seminar. We had some very, very good examples of how Guild One is piloted this royalty payments in the energy sector, and he had it down to dollars and cents in savings. From, I hate to speak for him, but it was 30 cents a barrel down to 1.5 cents per barrel of savings in the processes that they were using the blockchain.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's great to be able to give those numbers. Thank you.
There we go. Tanya, you might be best suited to answer this, but I'll throw it out to everyone. Interprovincial trade barriers are often said as a way that Canada can grow our economy fairly quickly by reducing them. How can blockchain facilitate dropping those trade barriers, and what will it take for us to move the needle on government?
It's like a massive question you just dropped on me at what time? So we'll talk about it offline because we don't have a lot of time right now. The quick about this is actually quite simple. Right now, the provinces have a variety of interprovincial trade barriers, and the government federally has been working to create an agreement that's going to flatten out a bunch of them. So that's a good thing. The federal government and the provincial government, for those that don't know, they get their mandates on power and trade and stuff from the Constitution. So it's not like that's an easy problem to sort out. However, when we look at something like air travel, we fly all the time between provinces. So starting to show partnerships across provinces in dedicated sectors is actually a great way to show the governments at multiple levels, look, moving Canadians, just that alone across sectors, we figured out how we can build a system together. And that's something actually I'd really love to see. And then working across industry sectors to do it. In Ottawa, I'll be advocating, if I can learn more about where you come from on this, I'm happy to advocate for you on it. Our biggest thing that we've asked for right now, and it's in our election strategy, it's in our go forward for the next year, is agreement municipally, provincially, and federally on definitions. So just, if everybody can agree on the basic, what is a cryptocurrency, what is a digital security, what is a non-security digital asset, even those little bit of definitions is a massive first step to achieve something like I think where you're going.
Awesome, thank you.
Well, I would like to thank all of our incredible panelists for today. And we have a certificate to show our appreciation. So can we get a major round of applause? Thank you so much.